All right. Hello, everybody. You all got a chance to watch the keynote this morning? Yeah. A lot of exciting announcements, and I'm sure you can't wait to go back and try it out. Yeah, cool. Just a little show of hands before we get started, and the light is a little bright, so I'm going to try to see. How many of you use SFTP or need to deliver SFTP to your end business unit users, et cetera? OK, good, number of hands. How many of you use a legacy stack right now, like a managed file transfer stack, and are looking to really find a way to modernize and replace it? Great. OK. A little shift. How many are AS2, AS4, and electronic data interchange users as part of your MFT platform? OK, cool. Saw a few hands go up there. And finally, how many of you are partners or delivering for our customers and modernizing their MFT stack for them? OK, awesome. Look, for those of you who raised your hands and those of you who didn't raise your hands, I can tell you that you'll walk away today learning how you can manage your modernize your managed file transfer using SFTP. I'm Smita Sriram. I'm part of the AWS Transfer Family team. Joined by me is my colleague, Fabio. So a little rundown of the agenda. We'll start by talking about the value of modernizing your managed file transfer and give you examples of some of our customers who have done that, a few stories about them. And then we'll go a little deeper into our approach in helping you build your MFT so that it can work well as part of your intelligent data pipelines. And we'll talk about also why that's important and how some of the features we've launched this year can help you build that. I'm really excited. We launched AWS Transfer Family web apps right on Sunday, and it's our latest launch. We'll talk a little bit about it here, but there is a dedicated breakout session tomorrow, STG305, note that down, where we'll dive into how it works, some of the use cases that web apps can enable. Fabio here is going to give you a demo to show you how you can build your cloud-native managed file transfer. We'll wrap it up, and I promise we'll leave a little time for Q&A. Oh, I didn't even, OK, cool. Yeah. So let's level set a little bit on what your expectations of a managed file transfer are. Right? The first thing that we hear is you may want one or more protocols. Some of you said, yes, SFTP, FTPS, AS2. And that's important because these protocols are industry standard, meaning when you have applications across organization boundaries, you host your application, your trading partner hosts an application, a common equation for these two applications to talk is typically one of these industry standard protocols. Right? The second one is authentication and the flexibility for various access controls. Many of you probably use different directory, right? Whether it's Okta or Entra or Active Directory. You want your MFT to support all of these directories. A third and important trending theme for us is automation. You want the whole process to be set up so it's automated, so you're not nurturing that one by one. And automation has become a key theme for us as we launch new MFT features. And fourth and most important is centralized logging and auditing, so you can meet a lot of your regulatory requirements. And what we're hearing from customers, I know many of you raised your hands. You said, hey, I manage legacy MFT stacks. And managing that stacks can be pretty challenging. Right? You are managing that infrastructure, and and it is a burden if you have to manage growing needs for connectivity, storage. And then as your number of trading partners grow, how do you manage each and every configuration? And as you do that, a lot of that data is still stored on premises if you're managing that stack in your on-prem environment. And that stack and that storage is inaccessible to a lot of the BI tools that's in the cloud. For example, you heard a lot of Bedrock innovations today in the keynote speech. And as part of that, if that data is stored on-prem, it becomes very difficult for you to use some of those features to get more insights from that data. How many of you operate in a regulated industry? Okay, a lot of hands go up. And as part of that, you have to regularly patch your SFTP servers and make sure the security updates are taken in, right? And that's another point of burden for your team. And making sure all of this is running 24/7 just uses up resources that you can probably use to differentiate your business. Many of you might have heard in DevOps, there's this popular concept called pets versus cattle, right? And a lot of our customers have said, hey, we don't want, today we're treating our MFT as pets, meaning you're nurturing if something goes down. It's all hands on deck to get exactly that type of infrastructure up and running. When our customers want to actually treat it as cattle, meaning that they want to minimize the amount of individual work that goes into bringing up system resources when they go down. So they just want to be able to deploy it in a common environment using the common tools that they use along with the rest of their infrastructure in the cloud. And that's exactly why we launched AWS Transfer Family right here in Vegas 6 years ago, reInvent 2018. And with 6 years of experience helping customers like you manage, modernize their managed file transfer, we've evolved the service from eliminating management burden to now helping you make it part of your data pipelines. And that's what we'll talk more about. The service is fully managed, means you're not managing any infrastructure, it's highly available, and also it scales to meet the growing demands of your business. All our service resources can be deployed as infrastructure as code. So for builders out there, you can easily run it as part of your architecture. And we have support for multiple protocols, as I mentioned, which gives you a lot of flexibility as you build your trading partner network. This year, we launched support for Event Bridge. So you get events. Events are triggered when files are uploaded, downloaded, using all of our protocols. So you can then use that to run event-driven workflows in job orchestration engines like AWS Step Functions. And as a result, when you automate a lot of these processes, it helps you build dashboards that can give your business users way faster time to insights from that data. I'm really excited that tens of thousands of customers around the world are benefiting from AWS Transfer Family. And one specific customer I did want to talk about was Regeneron. They had a challenge, like many of you might relate to, using a legacy on-premises MFT solution. It was expensive, posed a lot of security threats, and they had to invest a lot of resources. It was a lot of operational overhead for them. And on top of all of that, they did not have the flexibility for the authentication options that they were looking for. We worked really closely with Regeneron and their team so that they could build their internal file transfer service using AWS Transfer Family and benefit from our authentication and IP options that we offer today. And with that architecture now, they're able to service a number of internal users and thousands of external users to upload and download terabytes of data. The customers, they were able to get the outcome that they wanted with the reduced operational burden, meet their compliance requirements, and most importantly, as you can read in the tagline, they saved overall 90% using Transfer Family for their managed file transfer. If you want to read more, feel free to take a picture. There's a detailed blog post describing in detail how they achieved this. Data. I know data is becoming an important part of our everyday life, right? And I can see a lot of data geeks out there, just like I am, right? And in order to get faster time to insights from that data, you want your managed file transfer to work natively with your data pipeline. And that's exactly in the rest of the session what we'll talk about, how you can build your file arrival, file uploads, file downloads to work seamlessly with your data pipelines so that the time to insights for your to empower your business users becomes much easier using our services. Speaking of data lake, right? So FINRA wanted to use Amazon S3 as their data lake for a lot of benefits that S3 brings as a data lake, which there were a lot of announcements in the keynote today on that, related to that as well. So, but in order to use S3 as their data lake, they needed an SFTP server so that they could so that their end users could upload files directly into their data lake. Instead of building their own infrastructure, they worked with us to build their own FileX platform using Transfer Family. Again, the same, right? They reduced operational burden, and then they could continue to focus on building their data lake in S3 and get the insights that their business needed. Another example that I want to talk about, which is related to electric vehicles. Right? The Singapore government wanted to increase the use of electric vehicles within, and in order to do that, what do you need with electric vehicles? Charging stations, correct? And to install charging stations, they would need a heavy amount of infrastructure investments. And before they did that, they wanted to, just like many business decisions that you take, they wanted to be data-driven about it. However, a lot of that data was stored in government databases, file systems, all across the board. So they needed to bring that data in so that they could use it to make this important decision. They used Transfer Family, SFTP, to bring that data into their raw data landing zone on S3, from where they could easily kick off AWS step functions and EMR Spark jobs for this analysis. At the end of it, they were, just like our other customers, they reduced their CapEx, replaced it with OpEx, no management burden, and then they could focus on their ultimate goal of building, charging stations where they really needed it. You can read more on this interesting blog post. Again, there's a photo QR code right there. So stepping back a bit, I know many of you have a lot of unstructured data, right, sitting everywhere, just like some of our customers that I spoke about. So how do you get all of that data in, right? And that's where Transfer Family sits to bring all these disparate sources of data into AWS and then process it, transform it so that it makes it so it's easy to then analyze that data using a lot of the AWS services available for analysis today. SageMaker, Bedrock, Q. I mean, the options are endless once you bring that data into AWS. So today, there are 3 pillars that we key in on as part of our approach to manage file transfer and electronic data interchange. First is servers. We offer SFTP, FTPS, FTP, and even AS2 configurations. And more recently, as I said, we just launched web apps, which enables you to provide a simple web interface for your end users who are authenticated using Identity Center and access controls using S3 access grants. The second pillar is you want to be able to process the data. We have a number of options. Notably, we have our own inbuilt workflows that Fabio will talk about, as well as events that we trigger so that you can build more complex processing using that data in step functions or other job orchestration engines. Third is integrate that data. Right? We launched SFTP connectors last year, which is a managed client that can scale to go fetch data from other SFTP servers hosted by, either in your on-prem environment or your trading partners, and so that you can bring the data in and use it in AWS. And then the last one is AWS B2B Data Interchange. It's a service that we launched last year to automate the transformation of EDI documents at scale. I'm really pleased to say that we recently added generative AI-assisted mapping code generation that makes it much easier, again, reduces the amount of time and effort it'll take you to build that mapping code. There are a lot of use cases that the service has enabled. Some of them are, if you are in supply chain or logistics and you want to expand your trading partner network, B2B data interchange removes that heavy lifting of mapping and transformation. Similarly, if you work in healthcare claims processing, benefits enrollment, and you want to be able to use that data easily in AWS with the goal of either reducing costs or optimizing healthcare, improving patient quality, the service can really help you accelerate build out of those architectures. And we also have a lot of use cases in financial services. If you need to bring in mortgage processing documents or something related to real estate, again, the service can help you reduce the heavy lifting related to those architectures. The service has 4 key capabilities, and if you want to learn more, please visit the website, and also you can come talk to us if you have more questions. All right, so cool. With that, I'll hand it over to Fabio. So he'll talk about some of the features that we've launched this year that'll help you, that'll build a managed file transfer that works well with your data pipelines.
Thank you, Smita. So how do you add intelligence to MNFT data pipelines? So when we talk about event-driven, we really need a solid central event bus where we can send events and target other AWS services that can automate data processing with context-aware events. When I say context-aware, I mean who uploaded that file? When did they upload that file? Which IP address did the file come through from? What protocol did they use, right? And then we need to make it easy for data to flow in. So we need to support to multiple protocols. We support SFTP, FTPS, AS2 for EDI, and now recently HTTPS for non-technical users. And of course, you need governance on top of that. So we take care of the security and industry standard support like HIPAA and PCI of our infrastructure so that you can take care of your requirement for security and compliance. How does it look like in practice, adding intelligence to a data pipeline? Data flows into your infrastructure through Transfer Family. That data is hosted externally, typically, to AWS. It might be somebody uploading a file to a Transfer Family server, or it could be you using a Transfer Family connector to fetch a file. And as soon as the file is ingested through Transfer Family, we fire an event. And we can target, for example, an AWS step function, state machine, to orchestrate all the steps to ingest the data, store it in the right location, and make it available for services to consume that data after we did the processing that we need to do. Smita mentioned Bedrock. So if you ingest PDF files, you can read the content of these PDF files and then use AWS Glue to transform this unstructured data into structured data and then query it with SQL language using Amazon Athena, or you can visualize your data using something like Amazon QuickSight. In the slide, you see a QR code for a very cool blog post about it, which I advise you to take a look at. Smita mentioned these 3 pillars for MFT: access, process, and integrate your data. Let's talk about the access part. With Transfer Family, as I said, you get access to protocols. We didn't add HTTPS, but that's the new protocol that we support with web apps. We also give you options for network security. When you create a Transfer Family server, you get options or where your endpoint is hosted. It could be externally accessible, or you can deploy your endpoint within your VPC. And then you can leverage security groups to limit access to your endpoint. You can even create private-only endpoints that are only accessible by your application pipelines. On top of network security, you need obviously strong authentication and authorization options. You need options to give granular control to your users. And we do that, we'll go in detail in the next slide, and we actually released this year a toolkit that allows you to easily integrate Transfer Family with external identity provider, like Okta or Intra-ID or Amazon Cognito, whatever you use. And of course, we log all the data plane and control plane API call to CloudWatch and to CloudTrail. We use JSON format for the logs so that you can easily create dashboard in CloudWatch. And of course, you have a CloudTrail where you can satisfy your auditing requirement. Let's drill down a little bit on the authentication options here. If your user authenticates using SSH keys, you can simply use Transfer Family managed users. However, if you want password authentication, then we offer direct integration with AWS Directory Services. You can use Managed ID if you host your Active Directory in AWS, or you can use AD Connector to connect to your Active Directory on premises. We offer also a custom authentication option that use Lambda to authenticate to external IDPs. And that could be almost everything, from Intra-ID, Microsoft Active Directory, Amazon Cognito, etc. What we heard from our customers is that this flexibility is great, but it takes time to write the Lambda function to do the integration. And also, many customers use multiple authentication sources, multiple identity providers, and they want to keep using those identity providers with the Transfer Family. That's why early this year, we released the toolkit to integrate with external identity provider. It's easy to deploy. You use a SAM template to deploy the solution. It provides you with modular integration with multiple identity provider. It gives you a standardized schema. It's 2 tables in DynamoDB where you define your identity providers, and where you define your users and you define the access that these users have. And security is built in. You can even only authenticate users if they come from specific IP ranges. Again, that's a very cool blog post, and it also includes a link to the GitHub repository where you find all the modules for the different identity providers. And Smith already mentioned web apps. This is really to give access, easy access to data that's stored in Amazon S3 to non-technical users. The protocols that we use to support, like FTPS, SFTP and AS2, really play well with application stacks, not very much with non-technical users. Now with web apps, we provide a fully managed web interface that allows external users to upload files to S3 or download files from S3. Again, it's very easy to configure. You can customize it with your company brand and color scheme. For the end user, it's a familiar browser experience that I will show you in the demo, actually. While we take care of managing the underlying infrastructure, providing high availability and compliance to standards like HIPAA and PCI. We talked about easy access to data, and we need to process the data before we make it available to other AWS services. You have two different approaches with Transfer Family. If you need a simple workflow, you can use Transfer Family Managed Workflows. It's the left part of the graphic. You can do steps like copying a file, tagging a file in S3, decrypting a file, deleting a file without writing any code. And you can use low-code Lambda functions to do custom steps that are not predefined by us. However, if you want to replicate common workflow in legacy MFT, more flexible, more perhaps specific for per user or per file types, that is where the integration with Event Bridge really shines. It gives you flexibility, and you can define your workflow steps in something like step functions, like I will demo now in a few minutes. Another important distinction is that Transfer Family Managed Workflow only works on file uploaded through a server, while Event Bridge integration is available on any kind of operations. File upload, file download, and even when you use connectors. So when you upload a file, you can pre-process the file. When you download a file from an SFTP server, you can process the file after that. This is a typical example of a simple workflow that you can have, and you can use a Transfer Family Managed Workflow to design this, where you create an archived copy of a file after it's been uploaded, you decrypt the file, and then you use a Lambda function to call something like guard duty and do an antivirus scan on that file. If something goes wrong and there is any exception during the execution of the workflow, we have exception handlers. Something goes wrong, you have an alternate workflow that you can execute to take different steps in case you get an exception. And this is a typical workflow that you can create using the integration with Event Bridge. If a file is uploaded to your SFTP server, you use an Event Bridge integration and you target a step function, state machine, where you can go through the steps. You can tag a file, you can route it to a different bucket, you can archive the file, you can check the format of the file to make sure what you're receiving and what you expect. You can encrypt the file at rest, or you can decrypt it if it was an encrypted file. You can do a malware scan, or you can scan it for PII to make sure that no such information are included in that document. And then you have, of course, the opportunity to have an error bucket where if something goes wrong, like if there is malware scan and the malware is positive, you drop it there for quarantine where you can actually check with your partner what happened. And if you need to integrate external data in your MFT infrastructure, SFTP connectors are a key component. We introduce static IPs so that you can now seamlessly exchange files with your trading partner if they only allow connection from known IP addresses. And we give you standardized security policies that you can use for broad compatibility with a wide range of external server configurations. SFTP connectors are fully managed SFTP clients. You can download files from, upload file to SFTP endpoints. And this year, we added APIs for listing an SFTP endpoint and checking the status of an existing file transfer. You trigger this operation using APIs so it seamlessly integrates with any pipeline that you might already have. And of course, connectors, as similarly to SFTP servers, log everything to CloudWatch and to CloudTrail so that you can satisfy your requirement for auditing and security. I want to drill down on a couple of key features of SFTP connectors. First of all, it's a fully managed client. You don't have to care about how many files you are going to transfer. We scale based on the traffic that you generate. When you create a connector, you don't pay any upfront cost for a connector itself. You only pay for the volume of data you transfer using a connector. And it's really easy to create a connector. It takes a couple of minutes. And now with the new API, you can, in real time, just passing a transfer ID, knowing what the status of a transfer, if it's still in process, if it fails, or if it succeeded. Why we created this API? Well, if you think of a pipeline like this, where you, at a certain point, you start a file transfer, you cannot go to the next point, to the next step of the execution, if you don't know if the transfer is completed successfully. Previously, you could do that only using the integration with Bridge. Now you can use a simple API call to know the status of the transfer, and you get to the next step only when the transfer has been completed. And I advise you to go to this blog post that guides you through creating a very similar step functions and processing pipeline like the one you see in the slide. Now, before going to demo this architecture, I want to spend a few minutes talking about what my team has been busy doing since last year at re:Invent. For the two gentlemen that use AS2 in their business, we improved support to AS2, providing static IPs for outbound transfer. And we integrated AS2 protocol with Bridge so that you can build your event-driven pipelines. And we also introduced support to self-signed certificates, important for compatibility. We've been working on the SFTP protocol as well. Very similarly, we provided static IPs for connectors and Bridge integration. But we also increased the file size that you can send or retrieve using connectors and the throughput, the number of operations that you can make. And we introduced the standardized security policies to increase the compatibility of connectors with your external server's configuration. We introduced the two APIs that I just spoke about. And from the regional point of view, we launched Transfer Family in the Canada West and in the Malaysia region. And last but not least, we launched web apps 2 days ago for easy access to data stored in S3 for non-technical users. And now it's demo time, but before I get to my laptop, I quickly want to show you the architecture of this demo. I'm going to use two step functions. The first one is going to list the files on an external SFTP server that happens to be a Transfer Family server. I retrieve the file, and Bridge will call a different step function that is the one that you see in the slide, where we process the file. We archive a copy of the file. We decrypt the EDI file that we retrieve is not a PDF. After the decryption, we trigger a malware scan using guard duty. We wait for the scan to be completed. And then we carry on with the next step, which is specific for this partner, and it's going to be a transformation of the EDI file into JSON format. For that, we use AWS B2B data interchange, which will drop the JSON file in an S3 bucket. And the last step will delete the original encrypted file because we don't need it. I will log into the Transfer Family web app and access the JSON file and EDI file from the web interface so that you can see what the end user experience is using web apps. And let's go in and have fun with the demo now. Great. I'm going to first log into the Transfer web app. I'm going to use this reinvent24 user. I pick the right password. And I just get a familiar web interface, right? Everybody's able to use this without any training. I only see a prefix called partner01 within this bucket. I'll show you later how I scope down the access to a specific folder or prefix in a bucket. And I can see here that I have read and write permission. I can actually decide of giving read only, write only, or both to users. If I look into the folder now, I don't find anything, as expected. Now I'm going to fire the first step function state machine. When I execute the state machine, the only parameter that I pass to the state machine is the ID of my partner. In this case, it's partner_01. This state machine in a real use case will probably be triggered by a schedule, right? I just do it manually now for the sake of demoing. If we see what happens to the state machine, first thing, we go to DynamoDB in the get partner parameters step, and we get the item for our partner01. What we need in this case is which connector should I use to connect to my partners. A connector contains the configuration needed to get to my partner, so the URI and the credentials to authenticate to the SFTP server. Then I start listing the files there, and I pause the state machine. This API is asynchronous in nature, so I fire the listing, and then I wait until the listing completes. When I get the event from EventBridge, I resume the state machine, and I look at the list. The list is a JSON file. If the list doesn't contain anything, I've got nothing to do, and I fail the state machine. If the list contains files, I go ahead and I send to Transfer Family APIs to initiate the transfer of these files. And this state machine has done its job. When the file transfer completes, we use EventBridge integration to fire this step function. And this one has been just triggered now. If we look at what happened here, the first thing we do, we create an archive copy of the file, whatever it is. Before we touch it, we archive a copy. Then we go to our DynamoDB table to get parameters that we need. Like in this case, how do I decrypt the file? Which PGP key should I use to decrypt the file? And for this specific partner, which kind of post-processing I want to do, right? So if the file is encrypted, we go ahead and we decrypt it. If it is not, we don't do anything. And then we trigger a malware scan. We send the file to an external bucket where Amazon Guard Duty is enabled. And we wait for Guard Duty to complete the scan of the file. When we get the result of the scan back, we resume the state machine. And if the file is infected, it's got malware, we quarantine the file, and we don't make it available to the downstream application. If the file is clean, we execute the specific step for that partner. In this case, we send the file to B2B, data interchange, and we transform the EDI file into JSON. And then eventually we delete the initial decrypted file because we don't need it anymore. Now if I go back to my web app and I refresh here, hopefully, yeah. We see the EDI file. It's a EDI 214. It gives me an update on a status of a shipment. This is how it looks like in EDI format. Inside the EDI folder, we have the transformed file folder. B2BI data interchange prefix the transformed file with the transformer ID so that we know which transformer was used for these files. And here I can see the JSON file that is the result. The name you see is the original file name plus a timestamp, and then the JSON extension. I can download it, and if we take a look, this is the JSON representation of the same EDI file that we see on this side. Now, this can be consumed by an ERP, for example, downstream. We're sure that the file is clean, there is no malware, it has been transformed automatically. We don't need to do that in batch anymore. It can be done automatically as soon as the files come in. Now, this is what the user sees. Let's take a look of how it looks like from an administrator point of view. How does a web app looks like? We added this new section, web apps, in the Transfer Family console. And this is the web app that I just logged into it. You can see that as identity provider, I'm using IAM Identity Center. You could use external IDPs through federation with Identity Center. You could use the Okta or Intra-ID, whatever you want. And here's the user defined in Identity Center. If I open my user, reinvent24, as administrator, I can perform usual tasks. I can reset the password for the user. I can disable access. I can see the active session. I can see the IP addresses they are logging in. And I can delete the session if I need. Looking back at the web app, you will see here that we assign an IAM role to a web app. That sets the initial scope of access of the entire web application. How do I scope down per user? I do that using S3. And S3 provides access grants. If we look at access grants here, I created some. And one of these access grants is assigned to my user. It's this one where I get access to this bucket to the prefix called partner01. When you create a grant, super simple. You just browse your location that you register for S3. You decide, OK, this user needs access to this bucket, but I don't want giving access to the entire bucket. I want to give access to this prefix, right? And you do it in this way. And then you decide the level of permissions. I want this user to read only. I don't want to be able to write. And then you decide the type of grantee. In this case is IAM Identity Center. You can assign this access grant to a specific user or to a group of users. And then you just specify here the ID of that specific user or group. Super simple. Let me just look at the time. We still have some time. Let's see now how these pipelines are orchestrated using Event Bridge. So if I look at Event Bridge, this is the Event Bridge rule that I use to pause the state machine and wait for the list to be completed. What we capture is just an event emitted by Transfer Family, AWS Transfer. And I'm just interested only events that tells me that a listing is completed successfully or it's failed. And then I target a Lambda function that go to the step function state machine and resume it with the outcome of the listing and says, okay, we have a list. Here is where you can find the list. Go and fetch it. Or the list is actually failed the state machine. Once the transfer is completed, we use a different Event Bridge rule. Now I'm only interested in this kind of event. I only want to know when a connector retrieved the file successfully. And when that happens, I target directly the step functions that I showed you before. And I also target a CloudWatch log group where I log all these events captured by Event Bridge just to make troubleshooting easier if needed. This is all for my demo, and Smitha, back to you for wrapping up the session, and then we have some time for Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Fabio. Thanks for the demo, and hopefully you all learned how you can build exactly what Fabio showed as part of your, modernizing your cloud-native MFT. Oops. Yeah, cool. So as next steps, what I would recommend if you have an AWS account manager, contact them and say, hey, I attended, the file transfer session, SFTP session, and I want to take the workshop so I can build exactly the demo that Fabio just showed. So we have about 2-3 workshops, 100, 200, and 300 level that, your account manager can either host as a private event or you can run it self-paced, either way. The second thing is Fabio mentioned toolkits. Toolkits are meant to accelerate your development, so you're not building the same Lambda from scratch. And we also promote some of the best practices in how you can build your access controls, everything using DynamoDB. And third, I know, so here are the workshops. I just wanted to share if you wanted to look at the QR code, take a photo. We have 100, 200, as well as 300 level. The demos that Fabio showed span between the 200 and 300 level workshops. Yeah, so going back to the third takeaway, so some of you may not have builder resources within your organization, and we have a partner program where they are specialized in Transfer Family with best practices to help you build your MFT. Most recently, we actually had a success story with one of the partners, Scale Capacity, who helped the city of Los Angeles modernize their file transfer infrastructure and reduce costs. So you can visit that website and you can read more about this partner-led success story for migrating an MFT. A lot more resources, our product website, guides, videos that you can watch. Again, we have a ton of resources within the service, and some of this documentation can help you get up and running faster. Fabio mentioned our recent launches in, recent regional launches. I just wanted to step back and give you a picture. Transfer Family is available in all AWS commercial regions, GovCloud and China. So I know many of you might have multi-region deployments. So the Transfer Family is available in several of these regions today. Cool. Continue on your storage learning. A lot of resources, again, beyond Transfer Family for you to understand and use AWS storage. And yeah, I'll open it up. I know we have a few minutes for Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. Happy to answer anything.